It is time. LSU versus Clemson in Clemson, South Carolina, as Brian Kelly calls it, Death Valley Jr. Joe, the LSU Tigers go into Clemson and pull out a much-needed victory, 17-10. I said this all week on AYS, and I just want to throw this to you before we get to the game. For Brian Kelly and LSU, this was a where's your program at? You lose this game yesterday, you know what's coming for you. They knew what was coming for them. I've been at that practice facility 14 days this past month. 14 out of the last, today's the 31st. 1-0 was everywhere. Brian Kelly made it an emphasis. The LSU Tigers going to Clemson and get a 17-10 victory. Your thoughts on the game?
Well, LSU fans, you are welcome. You are quite
if you
welcome.
Pick against LSU again, I'm going to kill you, by the way.
I am undefeated at picking against LSU. And what I mean by that is whenever I pick against LSU, you the fans, you win. LSU wins. So we'll see if I manage to stick behind that. I've been already toying with how I'm going to put together my top 10 for the Monday show, and it might be quite the overreaction. I'm going to see how you handle that. I'm not going to go any further. To the point, though, to backtrack to this game specifically, a lot of the things that I talked about that I needed to see LSU do differently this year when we did the preview of if they're going to take the step where they can get to the SEC championship game this year and get to the Final Four of the college football playoff, three things ultimately needed to happen. Your defense and your secondary needed to play a lot stouter.
They did.
And more cohesively, which they did. Your run game needed to be more intentional and more impactful and have more big plays, which it absolutely was. And finally, Garrett Nussmeier needed to calm down. He needed to see the field, and he needed to take what was in front of him. He needed to stop taking silly mistakes. He needed to stop making mistakes when pressured. All of those things came to fruition. This is one of the first times, let me rephrase that. This is one of the few times that you will see a team resolve all of their major issues against a top opponent this early on in a season. I am not going to sit here and crown this team a national champion.
Right.
It's way too soon to do that.
Right.
But I give Brian Kelly tremendous credit for very aggressively addressing these things. I give credit to it was Tom Fornelli of CBS Sports who had kind of said this, that whenever everyone's quiet about LSU is when they come up and bite you. And
every time, baby. Every time.
That's what's happening here. I give a lot of credit to what happened. I'll save the Clemson conversation because I don't want to spill everything out at the current moment. I think both these teams are awesome, which makes me feel really solid about LSU where they sit amongst the top teams in the SEC.
LSU over the last 2 decades and being tied with second in national titles, tied with Ohio State, only behind Alabama with 3. Joe, the 2 decades, the generations had been brought up that LSU wins this off of defense. Now, 2019 was different, right? They still had 11 people on that defense get drafted. All 11 defensively got drafted. When I see a team like last night, you talked about the issues that they had. Let's address them deeper. They got pushed around up front, and quarterbacks ran all over them. Klubnik really couldn't get anything going. Harold Perkins was a spy on Cade Klubnik a lot last night and would not allow him to utilize his legs to get anything going. It looked like the Harold Perkins of 2022. West and Whitweeks in the interior, in the inside backer role, when they try to run draws, Joe, they just absolutely got after him. However, Patrick Payton, hello. Gabe Relaford, Jack Pyburn, hello. And I have 3 clips that I have not told anybody about that are sitting right here on this projector. Dom McKinley, welcome here. Welcome in, good sir. Dominated that interior offensive line to slow that running game down. Joe, last year, LSU, and in all of their losses in the SEC or against ranked opponents, they have given up 250 yards rushing on the ground. Last night, they gave up 31. That is the difference in the game, is you would not allow them to run the football. You made them one-dimensional. Then you look at their secondary. Mansour DeLeone, A.J. Halsey, Tamarcus Cooley. Joe, that's the secondary that LSU fans are used to. Brian Kelly did something that not a lot of coaches do. He gave money back. He's like, hey, man, here's $1 million of NIL money. We got to go get some Jimmies and Joes. Well, I think Patrick Payton, who had 3 of the biggest plays in the first half defensively, a couple of batted passes, tackle for loss, pressure on Klubnik that led to the Mansour DeLeone interception, they just looked the part. But, Joe, I got to circle back to what you said in the beginning, because defensively they did a lot of good things. They were more physical than Clemson. The talking point going into the game was, man, can this LSU offensive line hold up? And they held up more than Clemson's, because LSU's defensive line was the one that took it to Clemson. 31 rushing yards. Klubnik not having a lot of time to throw in the football. Blake Baker getting after Cade Klubnik all night and sending pressure. That, to me, was the part that I thought that changed a lot of things. Now, to your point about Garrett, coming into the season, whether it be on this show or AYS, I said something was different with him in reference to his level of maturity. Joe, in the first half, he had a zone read that picked up 11 that went and got him 3. When in the good wide world did you see Garrett Nussmeier pull a ball, run for a first down on a zone read? It didn't happen. When did you see him checking the ball down for first downs? It didn't happen. Everything that everybody knew that LSU needed to work on manifested itself last night. Another thing, I know a lot of people were talking about LSU is probably going to try to get vertical. Joe, I got 7 clips right here. They were in too high all night. They didn't come out of it. They came out of it for one play. The touchdown that got reversed that shouldn't have been reversed to Barryon Brown. You want to play deep? We're going to take 7, 8, 9 yards in this screen game, and we're going to just bust you up. But this was a masterclass coaching and schematical fortitude by Brian Kelly. Let me tell you why. Joe, they had 37 minutes of time of possession. 37 minutes. They dominated the second half. Dominated. They wouldn't let Clemson get anything. Of the 11 possessions defensively, Joe, they had 6 3-and-outs. One of those 3-and-outs, or one of the possessions of the 11 that doesn't go as a 3-and-out, is because you fumbled the football and they were in field goal range and kicked the field goal. The other's a Mansour DeLeone interception on second down. They just physically dominated Clemson in so many different aspects.
Okay, so the one thing that I do not agree with you on is that there was this massive separation gap in terms of physicality. I think Clemson got away from the run game. But I felt like they got away from their run game and they abandoned it early, and they didn't try to emphasize establishing it, which what ultimately did hurt them, because they don't have a talented running back like they had in the past, like they did last year with Phil Maffa. They're converting wide receivers and moving them over. The rest of the guys and the depth that they have is way too young to rely on. But where I disagree is that you've got Clemson, who had 10 tackles for loss generated in this game.
Oh no, I was just talking about defense. I was just talking about how LSU's defense dominated that offensive line. Sorry if it came off wrong.
I misinterpreted that. That was a note that I had that I really liked about how Blake Baker approached this. And we knew coming into this, when he came in from Missouri, that he was going to be this super aggressive and creative defensive coordinator for generating pressures on opposing quarterbacks. And it felt like that didn't really come to fruition last year at all. They didn't have the bodies to do it. I think now that they do. I saw a number of times where they're running stunts and they're getting pressure off the edge or up the middle because they could trust their secondary to go back there and man coverage. That Mansour DeLeone was a guy that I spoke so highly of coming in the transfer portal, and I tweeted about him, and I kept pushing and saying, this kid is going to be transformative for what LSU needs to do defensively. He is a great coverage player, and he's also versatile. He can do a number of different things. The interception was awesome. Right. Yeah. The play that he had was awesome, and then a number of the PBUs that he had were fantastic as well.
Ended the game twice.
Seriously.
He ended the game twice. I mean, both And Joe, both of those coming on Wesco.
Yeah. I think that a lot of credit needs to go to the changes that have been made to that defense and the new bodies that are there and the guys that are bought in. On the Clemson side of things, though, we have to talk about this. The team that I think that is the least screwed for reaching a national championship after this weekend is Clemson. I thought that they played a great football game, but they got away from certain parts of their offense that hurt them. They just couldn't finish and make the plays where they needed to in the red zone to get stops, like the touchdown that they gave to Trey Green. You can't leave a 6'7" tight end one-on-one open on the backside of the end zone. You can't do that.
And they got the 2 PIs on him too. I mean, yes. they left him one-on-one. Yeah.
This Clemson team, to me, I still feel pretty strongly as the best team in the ACC. I think Florida State has aggressively closed the gap, which we are going to get to when we get to that segment about the Alabama game. But I don't think that there's anything that Clemson did wrong that makes me feel negative about them. I also see a lot of people being critical of Cade Klubnik. I think that he had a lot of pressure in his face. He needs to step up into the pocket instead of just rolling and throwing off of his back foot, which was what led to the interception. This Clemson team still has talent. It's still well coached. It's going to be fine. And defensively, they should be able to smack around most of the rest of their schedule.
I want to bring up one thing about LSU before I get to your Clemson thought here.
Okay.
I think teams now have to make a decision if they have to walk up into the box to stop some of this short intermediate screens and this rushing attack. Because, Joe, I thought that they played way too conservative defensively in some situations. They didn't try to get after Garrett because Garrett just kept tossing the ball down and checking it down. Hey, man, if you're going to give me 7 yards, I'm just going to take it. And, Joe, that's what led to the time of possession. Here's the interesting thing for me with LSU. Joe, these teams are going to start walking down if they keep throwing these screens, and Barryon Brown is going to go off. He's going to go. I'm telling you right now, he's going to go off. I thought Garrett's not going to get the credit he deserves on this. Joe, for once, we saw a management. If you're going to go one-on-one with Trey Green, I'm going to throw it at him. And listen, what did I tell you during the offseason about him? I don't say this lightly. Of all the dudes on that team, I know this is a massive statement, but he has the athletic ability when this is all said and done to wear a gold jacket. He is that freaky. He is just that freaky. He's 6'7". He's faster than the DB, brother. Like, we saw him in a basketball game against a Final Four team block a shot, go down the court, and dunk it on his face. He was a top 5 pick in the NBA. I mean, you don't get freakier than that, dog. I'm sorry, you just don't.
Well, the way you get freakier than that is Ryan Day and his nipple piercing. So. I agree with that, though. I'm glad that you put me on to him and you tried to push me into getting to know Trey Green. Yeah.
This kid can play. Now to Clemson. Joe, let me reemphasize what I meant by the physicality part. They ran the ball 19 times for 32 yards. I don't disagree with you. I think you're right. They kind of got away from it, but I felt like they had to in a way because they just kept having tackles for loss. When you look at LSU defensively last night in their run game, I thought that offensive line got pushed around. When you talk about the tackles for loss, Ahmad Bro, Jamari Butler, Bernard Gooden, Tamarcus Cooley. But, Joe, we got to bring this up. Harold Perkins was amazing. And I think that in talking about Clemson, the things that they tried to do, Harold Perkins wrecked it in a lot of different ways, coming off the edge, coming on blitzes, and spying. I know the Antonio Williams going down situation is going to be a very big deal, and it hindered them. However, Joe, when we talk about Clemson, they're going to struggle if they can't find a run game. Is this LSU defensive front seven the best front seven that you see all year? Very well could be. But the bottom line is, if you can't find a run game to help Cade Klubnik, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, you can't be doing that, especially I don't know what the current injury situation is with Antonio Williams, but if there is an extended
pulled hamstring.
Well, then to that degree, that's bad to hear for a guy that's as speedy as him. They even, if I'm recalling correctly, they even put him in the backfield early on in the game, and that was a creative way of trying to find a different body to do something differently. And he's one of those receivers that has the physical profile that works in the backfield because he's compact, he's strong, he's shifty. There were ways to orchestrate and build out a run game, but if it's that fragile that when you lose a receiver that you were using as a gadget, if that is that fragile that you can't run the football, that is a problem. To the point, though, it's week one. You know, we're in week one. This is the one grain of salt that we can have with every single take that we have on the show is I'd rather learn in week one that we can't run the football than learn it in week 7. I'd rather get tested early and realize, okay, we have to problem solve this aggressively and figure it out now than for us to meander about most of the year and then realize in a big matchup, oh shit, this does not play up to par for what we need to do to be successful. So they have that advantage of foresight to see what are we going to do to get creative and to find ways to generate yards, and how can we lean on these guys more? I don't know what the answer is, to be quite honest with you, because I'm
not Adam Randall. But I will say this: I brought this up earlier.
Yeah,
Joe, that interior offensive line got dominated by Don McKinley.
Dude, that kid is special, man. I said that in the preview, that everything that I read and then you told me about him, it sounds like that kid is going to be silly good at LSU, and that's a kid that you need it.
I mean, but that's the part of their run game is, again, that interior offensive line against – so, look, Clemson's 0-4 against the SEC in the last 4 games that they've played. Mm-hmm. Let's call it what it is. Your offensive line's getting dominated. Sorry. I mean, we got to bring it up. You can't run the football effectively. If Klubnik doesn't make elite throws and doesn't go off, you can't get anything going. They're going to have to get back to the physicality. Now, to your point about defensively, Joe, name a time that you saw Peter Woods being a factor.
Again, I don't completely agree with that. I thought that they did it.
It wasn't a factor.
They got the ball out. LSU did a great job of getting the ball out quick.
So they ran right at him. They did. I mean, the film doesn't lie. They ran right at him.
I'm not saying that Peter Woods stepped up and was some integral, unstoppable force, but I think that it's a hair hyperbolic to say that he was unimpactful in this game. I thought that Peter Woods and TJ Parker and the defensive line gave up a couple of big plays, but I saw the athleticism of that unit and Sammy Brown come downhill and make plays behind the line of scrimmage.
I thought Sammy Brown looked really good.
Here's where I will agree with you. It is too volatile. You guys have to be more consistent. They can't get a TFL and then give up a big gain. You guys need to Clemson needs to reel it in a little bit more where it is steady stops within a certain range. So that's where I will concede. I think that there's still redemption.
Let me ask you, you hadn't brought him up yet. What were your thoughts on Harold Perkins last night?
I thought that the biggest part with this is the problem with Harold Perkins is nobody knows how to use him because he's the most outlier of outliers that we have had in the history of college football. He is
more than Isaiah Simmons.
Yes, because he's small. He's too short and not long enough to play like a true outside linebacker spot. He doesn't have the eyes and the instincts to play at inside linebacker. He's not twitchy and long enough to be an edge rusher, and he's too thick to be a defensive back, so we don't know what to do with him. And I think finally Blake Baker figured it out. There were a couple times where I'm watching, and they were so prepared where Clemson's left guard would over-pursue and then leave this gigantic gap, and then there'd be delayed pressure coming through that enormous 5-yard wide gap. I think that now understanding that is what you can use Harold Perkins for, which is delayed pressure and to just be this unexpected bullet that comes firing into your back hip when you don't know that it's coming. I think that Perkins did show some really positive signs. I think that he's still not fully baked in the terms of I still don't know what he is. One game doesn't answer that question, but I think that now that you have an understanding of how I can creatively and aggressively attack people with him, that is where LSU's defense takes the next step.